apparently stopped, I don't know if I can find this quick enough, but they stopped a shooting at a school in Alabama, I think. They stopped it before it happened. And, and you've got that guy who wanted to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court justice. And, somebody put it very clearly about what that incident showed. Why was Brett Kavanaugh not killed? Because this guy had the tools to bust into the home. He had the tools to tie Kavanaugh up. He obviously had a gun. If he had gotten through, he could have killed Kavanaugh. Would not have been that difficult. What stopped him? They had federal marshals protecting Kavanaugh in the neighborhood, and they accosted this guy, and eventually they got him. And what it clearly shows you is that if every single school had an armed guard or police officer at the front entrance and everybody locks the doors of all the other entrances, it's going to make a huge difference. And I think I mentioned this the other day. There's, I believe, $113 billion in COVID money that is unspent by the schools in America. In fact, I have a story about what they have spent this excess COVID money on at the schools. And not surprisingly, it's not what you think. In fact, I'll get to that next since we're already talking about it. So having a guy at the front door of every school and locking all the other doors and having some kind of an alarm system so that they're locked would do a lot to mitigate the school shootings. On that end, I don't think it's complicated. And the Kavanaugh thing really brought that to light. And I'll get the details about the Alabama story too, and we'll talk about what they are spending the COVID money that went to all these schools, because this was part of, it was almost $2 trillion of printed money. This was invented money. $2 trillion added to the deficit because everybody, I don't know if they were panicking over COVID or everybody in politics realized this was the opportunistic moment where you could spend unlimited amounts of money and nobody was going to criticize you. Nobody was going to stop you. And man, did they go to town on spending. And of course, it takes a year and a half before we find out, hey, where'd the money go? Well, a lot of it not spent, which means they didn't need it. And then a lot of the other stuff is spent on things you don't need. And then stuff like school security, they're not spending on. All this stuff, these are all sound like unrelated threads, but they all connect. And that's our job here, is we do the connecting. So we'll get into that next on the John and Ken Show. KFI just keeps going on and on. Now, after the Uvalde, Texas situation, there was a lot of prattling going on from everybody. One thing that should be absolute is every school has got to have armed officers, armed security at the front, and or easily available. You lock all the doors, have sensors in case one is left open for any length of time, and have a real officer at the front, more than one. And the first reaction is, well, where's the money? Well, they printed trillions and trillions of dollars last year in Washington, so the money is there to be printed, to be made up. And Cal Matters, which is an online media site, and it does great investigations into government, and they did one to try to track down $33.5 billion in COVID money sent to the schools, a combination of state and federal money, $33.5 billion. It was one-time funding. It's equal to a third of all the money that you would normally get in a year. So whatever money the school systems got, that was a third more than usual. And there were no restrictions on what to spend on. Right? I mean, and the thing is you had to spend the money quickly or you have to give it back. So imagine if somebody gave you that deal. Here's 4 months of your salary, spend it as fast as you can or send it back. Well, the schools went crazy. They spent money on laptops, air filters, mental health counselors. Those are rational things in a pandemic situation. But there is no database to show how the schools have spent the money. There's been little oversight or transparency, as the bureaucratic dweebs like to say. In fact, whatever limited paperwork is required is virtually useless in tracking the money. $6 billion have been spent so far. More than a quarter went to the category of other. Like certain categories are obvious and you can track them to some extent. Well, it's the other. And John Affelt is a managing attorney at an organization called Public Advocates. And he says, excuse me, I'm just not sure anyone has a good handle of how this money was spent. So Cal Matters, this news organization, reviewed, well, they spent 3 months and they reviewed thousands of pages of records through 45 public records requests. And I'll give you some examples here, what they found. Capistrano Unified down in Orange County spent $10 million on Chromebooks so that students could learn online. Castro Valley Unified spent most of its stimulus money on payroll. Bonuses for everybody. Sure, that went for the kids, didn't it? Payroll. El Centro School District spent almost $4 million to install shade structures. Shade structures. I mean, most... You could probably buy a pretty good home for $3.8 million. They got what? Awnings, umbrellas. It's for outdoor eating, school assemblies, and teaching space. Shade structures. It says here some companies suddenly incorporated themselves to capture the windfall. There was a company formed in April of 2020. Their headquarters was a UPS drop box in Los Alamitos. And they got a $52 million no-bid COVID testing contract in San Diego. Oh, a lot of this was going on, huh? Instant company. You form an LLC, which is cheap. It's like a few $100s to incorporate an LLC. Fill out some papers. The address is a Dropbox, no bid COVID contract. If you have a buddy who's in charge of the contracts in some government entity, you get the big windfall. And who knows if they ever track if you produce the COVID tests or even if the tests work. There's another company they found. Its founder is described as a former CIA counterterrorism officer. This company became a COVID-related school consultant. The officer became a COVID-related school consultant, and he got a $12.7 million contract in San Bernardino to do COVID testing and contact tracing. Contact tracing was a really big bust, wasn't it? But this character claimed he was with the CIA, and they go, oh, you're with the CIA? Yeah, counterterrorism. Oh, my God. Well, we know how to do contact tracing. Yeah, that's easy for us. COVID testing, contact tracing. How much will it cost? $12.7 billion. No bid. Probably no cut. Woof. Believe this? Some of these decisions to spend are made behind closed doors. There's very little scrutiny. In other words, every dollar was not a dollar spent on counselors or tutors or teachers, and it adds up into the billions. There's no oversight. There's no record keeping. There's guys showing up with companies out of drop boxes, and they're getting no bid contracts worth millions of dollars. And so the state is getting looted. This is like a second chapter to the $30+ billion that all the scam artists and entrepreneurs looted out of the California Unemployment Office. Listen to this one. Then we're going to do the news. Santa Ana Unified gave $393,000 to the Angels to rent out Angel Stadium for high school graduation. They gave $393,000 to the Angels? They couldn't have graduation on their football field? What the hell? Really? In Santa Ana? I don't think Santa Ana schools are lighting up the test score websites. God, that is just massive corruption. Somebody ought to investigate that Angel situation. That smells bad. John and Ken Show.